Hello, I'm Miss Shaw from Your Favourite Teacher, and today I'm going to be leading on the descriptive writing webinar for the Your Frightful Teacher Halloween series. So just to tell you a little bit about what we're going through today, we are looking at developing writing based on setting, how to kind of make that as good as possible. And I'm going to be using a slightly different stimulus than I normally would to show you how to do that. And then we're looking at writing a lot about a little, which will help you in particular with the choosing the picture when you do your descriptive writing in an exam situation. And finally, I will be talking to you a little bit about technical accuracy and the best ways that you can kind of gain as many marks as possible when it comes to that technical accuracy side. Now, I'm very aware that there are lots of different schools on the webinar this morning. So rather than use the chat option on YouTube, I'm going to ask that you make sure you've got either a pen and paper with you, or if you're writing on a laptop or a tablet, that you've got access to something to be writing your notes and kind of having a go at the different tasks. If you would like for me to have a look at those after the webinar, just email them across to info@yourfavouriteteacher.com, and then just make sure you put in the subject English webinar. Okay, so it goes to me, and then I can give you some feedback and get back to you that way instead. Okay, so first off, our first task straight away, nice and easy. All I want you to do is listen very carefully to what I'm about to play to you and make a note of all the different sounds that you can hear. Based on those sounds, you're going to try and figure out what the setting might be, okay? So I'm going to press play now. I'm going to leave it running for a few minutes, probably not the whole video, but a few minutes, and then we'll move on to the next part. Make sure everyone can hear it. Make sure you're writing down your sounds, any new sound. And start to think about what the setting might be. Just realised how weird this probably is because you guys can only hear it, but I'm watching the video at the same time. There's method to my madness, I promise. Okay, I'm going to pause it there. There's a couple more minutes that I might play a little bit later, but I'll pause it there for now. So hopefully by now you've made a note of all the different sounds that you can hear. And from those sounds, I want you to try and link what you could hear to a particular setting, okay? I find when I've done this in the past with students that it's just a really quick and easy way to choose a setting that's not your average setting. So it's not like a park or your mate's house or the woods. Okay, so try and be a little bit creative with it. What kinds of sounds did you hear, and what setting would you pick based on that? And then once you've decided on the setting, you then need to think about the following things. So what the tone of your piece might be, what kind of language features or vocabulary would you use to kind of build up your description of this particular setting, and thinking about the five senses. So I always get this wrong when I get put on the spot. Sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. I definitely panicked there. So the five senses. So think about those things based on your setting. Well, obviously we're doing your Frightful teacher, so I tried to pick something that might be a little bit spooky, so therefore your tone might be quite spooky, like negative kind of language features and vocabulary to use, rather than light, happy, positive ones. And I always find with students, when they do descriptive writing, they find it easier to write about a scary setting or storyline compared to a happy one. I don't know why, but that's just the vibe I've gotten over the years from different students. So what I'm going to do is give you 5 minutes or so now to have a go at planning out your setting. Okay, this should be in note form, so you don't have to write in full sentences, it doesn't have to be full on paragraphs, but just in note form, some bullet points or as a mind map, what your setting would be. So you might have your setting in the middle of your mind map or the top of your list, and then underneath you've just got the kind of language features you'd use or vocabulary, the five senses, things that you would write about if this were an actual piece of extended writing. 5 minutes, off you go. I've got my little timer and everything. I'm prepared. Last time I did a webinar in this room, the window cleaner popped up and it scared the hell out of me. So I'm hoping the window cleaner doesn't pop up during this webinar, basically. Although I have a feeling that he will. I'm going to shush. You guys focus on your writing. I just realised I muted myself. You've got about 3 minutes left. Shall I play a little bit more of the, I'm going to play a little bit more just whilst you're planning. Might give you some more ideas. It's really sad. Forgot about that bit. You probably sat there writing like, what the hell? Okay, I'm going to pause it again. I really feel like that last bit changes the tone of the piece completely. So you guys might have been sat there planning it out, and it's like this really spooky setting, and like all these bad things are going to happen, and you've got all of your vocab. But actually, things as little as a change of song in this case can change the whole tone of the piece, because it started off. Obviously, I've seen the video, so it's hard for me to talk about it without pretending I've already seen it. But it starts off quite creepy and spooky, but then when you get that music towards the end, it kind of, well, I was about to say it gives it a bit of a lighter tone, but the music's quite sad, so it kind of turns from creepy, scary to kind of sad. And that's what your descriptive writing needs to be able to do. You need to be able to kind of take the reader or the examiner or your teacher on a journey through your piece. So it makes it really, really boring to read if your piece starts off really dark and depressing and gloomy, but it stays that way the whole way through. It's really, really boring. Whereas if you kind of start off all dark and gloomy, but then something changes and maybe there's a little bit of hope, and it kind of gets a little bit lighter and happier, but then goes back to doom and gloom, that's a good way of doing it, because you've got that kind of cyclical structure in your writing. Or you might have it completely flipped, so it starts negative, ends positive, or the other way around. Depends how you want to take it. But I would say when you're writing about setting, or when you're descriptive writing, when you're doing descriptive writing in general, whether that's writing a description based on a picture or you're writing a story, you need to ensure that you've got some sort of change of tone, just to kind of keep it a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more interesting and exciting to kind of use is the wrong word, but you know where I'm going with it, guys. So when it comes to actually writing a descriptive piece, I feel like in general students are very, very good at getting language features in there. They're very good at kind of trying with their vocabulary. Might not be amazing every single time, but those are kind of things that students are naturally good at because teachers drum it in them from like year 2 or something. Do you know what I mean? However, what I do find that crops up again and again with students of all ages really, but it's even more important when you get to GCSEs, is the use of your sentence starts and making sure that not every single sentence starts with the. So I would normally, in a classroom situation, get students to kind of sit and write for 10 minutes. And then as like a little self-assessment, go back through and highlight, underline, circle the first word of every sentence. And you would be surprised just how many people start the majority of their sentences with the. How boring. A little boy crept into the graveyard. The moon was bright. The stars were glittery. I don't know, but they start with the a lot, okay? We need to get out of that because it's boring and you don't get a lot of marks. Therefore, things like adverbial phrases, prepositions and similes are really, really good to use just to kind of switch it up a little bit. Now, I'm not saying you can never start a sentence with the, but I am saying just make sure that it's as minimal as possible in terms of those sentence starts and using the. So an adverbial phrase, suddenly, comma. If you start with an adverb, make sure you follow it with a comma, okay? Just grammatically. I'm talking a bit about technical accuracy a little bit later anyway, but if you start a sentence with an adverb, follow it with a comma because that's the grammatical way, okay? So suddenly, comma, the boy ran out of the tombstone. That was terrible, but you know what I mean. Rather than the boy ran out of the tombstone suddenly, comma, the boy ran out of the tombstone. Preposition, over in the distance, under the bush, under the bush, over the rainbow. You know what I mean? Start with where something is rather than just the. And then finally, a simile. I've put as quick as a flash, nice and easy, as quick as a flash, as quiet as a mouse, but things like that. And and also when you're doing that, you're basically using a complex sentence, so you're also avoiding, by starting with the all the time, just a constant use of simple and compound sentences. If you start with an adverbial phrase, a preposition or a simile, you've got no choice but to follow that first subordinate clause with a comma, therefore creating a complex sentence. You're welcome. I feel like I'm Maui from what's it called, Moana. But those are just some different ways to start sentences. If you haven't written those down, pop them down now. I'm sure we will be sending the PowerPoints out afterwards, but just in case, write them down. I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that whilst I make sure my timer is up and running. I always go too quickly. It's weird when you're recording it and you're not in a classroom in front of the students, so I don't know where everyone is. I'll wait a little bit longer than I normally would just in case. Okay, I'm going to move on. So you may or may not have heard of this extract before. If you're doing Jekyll and Hyde as your 19th century novel text for your literature exam, you probably know this quite well. But if you don't worry. Okay, I'm just using it because to fit in with the Halloween theme, it's quite like scary. So just to give you an idea of different ways to use vocabulary and sentence starts to kind of really develop that descriptive writing. So this extract is from chapter 4 of Jekyll and Hyde, and this is where Hyde beats a very important politician to death. Lovely guy, really, really nice. So all of a sudden, comma, he broke out in a great flame of anger, stamping with his foot, brandishing the cane and carrying on like a madman. The old gentleman took a step back with the air of one one very much surprised and a trifle hurt, and at that Mr. Hyde broke out of all bounds and clubbed him to the earth. And the next moment, with ape-like fury, he was trampling his victim underfoot and hailing down a storm of heavy blows, under which the bones were audibly shattered and the body jumped on the roadway. At the horror of these sights and sounds, the maid fainted. Dun, dun, dun. I mean, I'd faint if I looked out my window at 1 a.m. and witnessed that, to be honest. I might not faint, but I'd call the police, obviously. So here we've got not only a really, really good use of vocabulary, we've got fantastic use of language features, and we've got a variation of sentence starts. Well done, Mr. Dickens. So it starts with all of a sudden, okay? Straight away captures the reader's attention. All of a sudden, what's going to happen? Oh my God. He broke out in a great flame of anger. So not he got really mad, boring. He broke out in a great flame of anger. It reinforces the idea that Hyde is quite a scary person, and he's very irrational, and you don't know what's going to happen next. You might have a character based on that in your descriptive writing. Look at the use of verbs. Okay, I always think in terms of getting the tone right in a piece, whether it's a positive tone or a negative tone, the use of verbs is the way to go. So you've got stamping, brandishing, clubbed, trampling, hailing, shattered. They're all very what's the word I'm looking for? They're really, my mind has gone blank, but they really kind of create an image in the reader's mind. That is a terrible use of effect on the reader. Never write that in your exam. But they create that kind of clear imagery of something quite terrifying and quite horrifying to watch. And by using those verbs, it really does create that picture in the reader's mind of that, which makes it even more kind of horrific and disgusting. Oh, Dickens, he has started with the. It's not Dickens, is it? I've been going on about Dickens. It's what's his name? Robert Stevenson. Oh wow. Should we just, throw the webinar away? Dickens. I bet you're all sat there going, is she really a qualified teacher? Apologies. Robert Stevenson has started one of his sentences with the. Like I said, it's okay. It's okay to start a sentence with, I'm really laughing. Breathe. It's okay to start a sentence with the, okay? Just don't do it all the time. I mean, I even underlined this sentence because you could actually switch it around. So you could say, with the air of one very much surprised, comma, the old gentleman took a step back and a trifle hurt. Oh no, that wouldn't. And a trifle hurt, and then at that Mr. Hyde broke out of all bounds. So you could switch it round if you wanted to. I always think when you're evaluating your piece, and obviously as amazing students you would use the time at the end of the exam, you give yourself 10 minutes or so to read back through your work. When you're doing that, if you do notice that you've got quite a lot of sentences starting with the, don't panic, don't worry, just draw a line and then write across the top, okay? Or do a little star and a star, okay? But just switch it up. I always say that examiners prefer to see a page that's been kind of had signs of being scribbled out and things kind of added in and stuff like that. They like the look of a messy page, not too messy because obviously they've still got to read it and give you marks, but they like the look of a messy page compared to a page that's just been written and there's no sign of the student having gone back and read through it and making changes and stuff like that. Sorry. Whew. There needs to be signs of editing, which really kind of shows the examiner that you're really working hard and you're trying, okay? So I just thought I'd put that in as just an example of a good piece of descriptive writing and that use of kind of verbs and varied sentence starts to show you modelling good practice, basically. And obviously we've come to the conclusion that it's not Charles Dickens, it's Robert Stevenson. So yeah, don't mess that up in the exam. Okay, so moving on now to writing a lot about a little. So this is your picture. You're in an exam and you've chosen the option write a description based on the picture. Obviously I've had to pick something creepy because Halloween and all. You're probably sat there thinking it's not that creepy, but you know, I couldn't make it too creepy. This is 10 a.m. on a half-term morning. Can't make it too creepy, and Halloween's not for a few more days. So what I want you to do, based on that picture in front of you, I want you to pick out 5 or 6 things that you would write about. So if you actually had it in front of you, I'd get you to kind of circle it, but on your paper or on your laptop or your tablet, whatever you're doing, just make a note of the 5 or 6 different nouns, different objects in that picture that you would write about. And I'll give you a minute or so to do that before we move on to the next bit. Gives me a break from talking as well. Like, just in case you can hear the other call going on in the other room, I'm going to mute myself for a second. Okay, what we got? Did you pick 6 things out? Where did my voice go? Did you pick 6 things out? I hope you did, but if you didn't, here's some I did earlier. The grass, the tree trunk, the branches, the kind of coffin looking thing, not tombstone, the coffin, the sky, and the gravestones. Maybe it was a tombstone. Coffin, I'll go with coffin, in a bid to make it sound as scary as possible. So I'm just keeping track of the time. I always think this is a really, really good way to know before you even start writing that you've got something to be focusing on. Okay, so let's get myself comfortable. So rather than just kind of picking the picture, starting writing, getting 2 paragraphs in and thinking I've got nothing else to write about, this is a good way to kind of help break it up and help kind of talk about different areas of the picture rather than just looking at the picture as a whole. It just helps to break it up a little bit more. Therefore, you can write more about it, okay? And don't forget, obviously, thinking about the 5 senses, and using your varied sentence starts and stuff like that. That all really, really helps to be able to kind of develop that writing a little bit more. Now, the key with descriptive writing, especially if you're in an exam situation, is quality, not quantity. And I'm sure your teachers have told you that a million times. Quality, not quantity. The reason it needs to be quality and not quantity is simply because why would an examiner sit and read 5 pages of rubbish? I nearly swore. Not bad swore, but obviously we're in a webinar, so I can't. But why would an examiner sit and read 5 pages of rubbish when they can just read, 2 pages of gold, pure gold, So the trick is to really go into detail about things that perhaps you wouldn't go into a lot of detail on any other day, if that makes sense. So quality, not quantity. And in order to get that quality, you need to be able to zoom in to different parts. Now, remember, if you're being asked, I don't know why I'm doing this, if you're being asked to, the window cleaners here, guys, the window cleaner is here. So if he pops up at the window and I get freaked out, just ignore me and carry on working, okay? I feel like it's gonna happen. I shouldn't have looked out the window. Actually, I'm glad I looked out the window. At least then I know that he's coming. Anyway, ignore me. So, oh God, breathe. I've lost track of what I'm doing. How bad is that? Terrible. Right, so your descriptive writing piece, it is simply that. It's not writing a story, okay? It's asking you to write a description based on the picture. It is not asking you to write a story, okay? So I always tell students, imagine you're a CCTV camera. So like you're there, you're on the wall of the church or something, and you know, you can go around to the left, you can go around to the right, and you can zoom in and you can zoom out, but what you can't do is start wandering about, okay? So you can't, you know, the graveyard was deserted. I started with you don't do that. And then all of a sudden a zombie popped out of the coffin and went on a rampage, digging up all the other bodies and turning them into other zombies. Makes sense? You just don't start writing a story, okay? So when it talks about, or not when I spoke about using verbs to really bring the tone across, you can still do that in a still image, because you'd be using verbs to bring it to life. So the tree is not just going to stay there, you know, the branches are going to creak. You could personify the ends of the branches and there'd be little fingers reaching out and grabbing at the leaves and stuff like that. The leaves on the floor, they're not just going to stay there. If there's a breeze, it's going to like move the leaves about and stuff like that, okay? So you can still use verbs to really develop that tone within your piece. But as I say, what you can't do is have all of a sudden a zombie pops out of the grave and blah, 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 starts on a killing spree and stuff like that. Make sense? Makes sense. So, she says, the way to get around that, it's because I know the window cleaner's coming, guys. The way to get around that is to pick out your different objects, pick out your different things from the picture and kind of really focus on them, because then you're not obviously focused on creating that kind of storyline. Now you might get a picture that has people on a beach. I've seen in the past, okay, if you can see people on the beach, that's fine. You know that if you were actually there, you'd be able to hear children laughing, adults shouting, the children playing in the sea and stuff like that. But what's not going to be in the picture is a massive shark comes along and then Jaws happens and half the beach is massacred, okay? So if you do have people in the picture, you can obviously talk about them, okay? But you can't add extras in, basically. You can't turn it into Jaws 3. Don't know if there's a Jaws 3 already. So now that I'm going to stop talking and probably get scared by the window cleaner, you've got another task. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes. I'm actually going to try and stay quiet for 10 minutes, guys. This is a big ask for me. So you've got 10 minutes, okay? And I want you to start writing your description based on what you've picked out from the picture. So you can go for my example there on the screen in front of you, or you can just use what you've already picked out yourself, okay? I've given you a few little tasks on the side of the screen just to help you if you're thinking, I haven't got a clue how to start this. I know she said vary my sentence starts, but I don't know. So honestly, it's popping up a scene. Number one, open your description by writing about what you can feel or hear. Okay, so starting with using the senses straight away. So swiftly a chilly breeze moved across the graveyard, picking up the leaves and throwing them across something else. Okay, then you zoom in on one of your boxes. Describe what's inside using personification. Don't just stop there with personification. That's just one example. You can use a little bit more. You can, use the 5 senses again to really help kind of draw that out. The idea is, the title of the piece, write a lot about a little, okay? Just write as much as you can. As long as you're not just repeating yourself, it's fine, okay? What the examiner wants to see is a good use of vocabulary. They want to see varied sentence starts, use of language features and stuff like that. So if you can get a few in for each little box, that's going to really kind of develop your writing even more. So I'm going to shut up. You're going to do 10 minutes of work, and I will try my hardest to actually stay quiet. 10 minutes, off you go. I might stop a little bit sooner just because I realise that we're over half an hour in. I've got one more thing to do. But at least, you know, 5 to 7 minutes. Off you go. Shine up. Shine up. Oh, look at the window cleaner. God, he's actually there. There he is. It's not done a very good job, guys. You're a frightful teacher, eh? Maybe you could write a descriptive story about the scary window cleaner. I'm going to put myself on mute so you guys can't hear the window cleaner. Window cleaner's gone. Around the back, I think. Just keep everyone updated. I've lost track of time as well. Give everyone about 3 more minutes. You might be finding it quite hard, especially if you're not used to descriptive writing. I always say that a good thing to do is to use the source to your advantage. So whatever source you get for section A of the exam, it will be linked in some way to the creative writing section. So you can lift good vocabulary and maybe some sentence starts from that to help build your description. Obviously don't steal the whole thing because then you'll get 0. But yeah, you can kind of steal some good words and sentence starts, vocab, stuff like that, punctuation to help you out. Okay, should we move on? I mean, you can finish writing if you'd like, or afterwards, especially if you want to send it to me. But I'll move on because I'm very aware that we're kind of 40 minutes in. I don't want to leave you waiting too long. It's your half term. So I'm just going to very quickly talk about technical accuracy and how important it is in an exam situation. So first off, please make sure you've got paragraphs. If you don't have paragraphs, you will literally be capped at like 6 out of 16 for technical accuracy. They make it really low, so make sure you've got some clear paragraphs. Also, make sure that those paragraphs are not all like 10 lines long. Okay, what we want to see as examiners, as teachers, is a variation of those lengths, just because it makes it a little bit more engaging, and an examiner will visually look at your page first and they look for varied punctuation, use of paragraphs, capital letters and full stops. They look for that all first before they even start writing, and they will have an idea based on that glance at what kind of level you are for your creative writing. So make a good impression straight away. So those paragraphs, you know, have one 4-line paragraph, have an 8-line paragraph, then a 10, then maybe a 1-line paragraph. Just switch it up as much as possible. Punctuation, obviously you need to have more than just commas and full stops, otherwise again you will not have a very high technical accuracy score. So vary your punctuation as much as possible. Use an ellipses, a dot dot dot, use brackets, use exclamation marks. I don't know why I'm writing them all out. Question marks, stuff like that. Use it because it shows that you can vary your punctuation. It shows you know what the punctuation points are, even if they're not completely spot on. Okay, I always have students say, oh, but I can't use a semicolon, I don't know how to use it. Whack it in anyway. Okay, but obviously I'll tell you how to use a semicolon properly. So if you've got a compound sentence, so 2 super simple sentences joined together in the middle with a conjunction or a connective. So Miss Shaw was sat doing her webinar and the window cleaner scared her. You could have Miss Shaw was sat doing the webinar, semicolon, the window cleaner scared her. Okay, so you would just swap out the connective with a semicolon to add that in. Okay, if you put it in and you're like, oh, I'm not really sure whether I've done it right, don't worry. As long as you've got evidence of trying to vary your punctuation, obviously that will you'll be more likely to kind of pick up extra marks. Okay, sentences that make sense. This is all part of your reading back through and checking. Obviously you can't read everything out loud, and that is the main time where people kind of realize their mistakes. But you know, just mime the words as you're going through, or just read back through, and anything you spot, just try and correct it as much as possible. Capital letters and full stops, that's obviously a given. Please make sure you've got them in there. Obviously, hiccup. Obviously, capital letters are not just for the start of sentences. Make sure you've got them for all of your proper nouns as well. And I've already spoken about messy pages. I know I have. An examiner prefers to see a messy page than something that's clean and hasn't been touched. If you've got evidence of a messy page, it just means that you can kind of show that you've corrected things, you really thought about it, and you've put that time and effort in, rather than just writing it and shutting the exam paper and having a sleep for the last 10 minutes. Okay, just make sure that you've got a messy page. Obviously, again, not too messy, because an examiner still needs to be able to read your work. Okay, so that is the end of the webinar. If you do have any questions, or if you want to share your work with me, just email it across to info@yourfavouriteteacher.com with the subject heading English webinar, or Miss Shaw is cool. Obviously not Miss Shaw is cool, but yeah, English webinar's fine. Just email anything across, any questions, any work you want me to have a look at. Go for it. Gives me something to do. Don't tell my boss. And yeah, I can have a look at that for you. Obviously, the webinars are on top of any work you might be doing on the Your Favourite Teacher platform, and we have got our competition running, so make sure you're in it to win it. As many ghosts as you can over this half-term week. The student with the most ghosts, you get a £50 Amazon voucher and a Halloween hamper. I mean, I want it for myself. Apparently I was told I can't enter. I think that's really horrible. Maybe we should have a staff version as well. But it's a fantastic prize, and it's, you know, it's not very often you get a £50 Amazon voucher just for doing a little bit of work. So try and complete as much as possible on the site. You get your ghosts or your coins from logging in, taking a quiz, completing a lesson and completing topics. That's how you get your coins, or your ghosts, sorry, and that is how you're going to win. So please get involved. It's a fantastic competition and really, really good prizes. But until next time, hope you've enjoyed it, and you will probably see my face very soon. Bye guys, have a lovely half term.